Imagine you're searching for love, but instead of swiping through dating apps or going on awkward blind dates, you consider a more unconventional route, buying a wife. It sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, right? Surprisingly, in some parts of the world, the concept of buying a spouse isn't as far-fetched as it might seem. While it's important to approach such topics with sensitivity and respect for cultural differences, it's equally crucial to understand that these practices can be deeply problematic and often stem from complex socioeconomic issues. Let's take a look at 10 countries where, due to various social and economic factors, you might encounter the idea of buying a wife for as little as $5. But remember, this isn't just a shocking headline. It's a reflection of poverty, gender inequality, and cultural pressures. 1. Nepal. In some rural areas of Nepal, the practice of bride buying has historically been a reality, even though it's illegal and socially stigmatized. Economic hardships and ingrained cultural practices have led to dowries and bride prices being part of marriage transactions. In extreme cases, the cost of a bride can be as low as $5, reflecting dire poverty rather than a widespread practice. Local organizations are working hard to eradicate such practices by promoting education and women's rights, emphasizing that every person deserves respect beyond a monetary value. 2. Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, poverty has driven some families to accept bride prices as a means of survival. In certain rural areas, the cost of a bride can be surprisingly low, sometimes around $5. This situation is more about desperate economic conditions than cultural norms. The government and NGOs are working tirelessly to combat these practices by improving economic opportunities and educating communities about women's rights and dignity. 3. India. India's dowry system has long been a contentious issue. Although directly buying a bride for $5 isn't common, the dowry system can place a huge financial burden on families. In some impoverished regions, dowry amounts can be significantly reduced due to economic desperation. The Indian government and several NGOs are actively working to address these challenges, promoting women's rights and improving economic conditions. 4. Pakistan. In Pakistan, bride buying, though illegal, has been reported in some impoverished areas. The amount demanded for a bride can be alarmingly low, sometimes as little as $5, driven by severe economic constraints. These practices aren't reflective of mainstream cultural values, but rather a consequence of dire economic conditions. The Pakistani government and local organizations are focused on promoting gender equality and economic development to eradicate such practices. 5. Afghanistan. Afghanistan's economic hardships have led to troubling practices, including low bride prices in some regions. Buying a wife for as little as $5 can sometimes occur due to extreme poverty and traditional norms. Local and international organizations are working to improve economic conditions, provide education, and promote gender equality, aiming to challenge and change these harmful practices. 6. Myanmar. In Myanmar, poverty and traditional customs have led to practices where bride prices can be as low as $5 in certain areas. This reflects broader issues of poverty and gender inequality. Efforts are underway to combat these practices through education and economic development programs, aiming to promote women's rights and improve living conditions. 7. Laos. In some remote communities in Laos, extreme poverty has led to bride prices as low as $5. This isn't a widespread cultural norm, but rather a desperate measure due to severe economic hardship. Local initiatives focus on improving economic opportunities and educating communities about gender equality, challenging outdated practices. 8. Cambodia. In Cambodia, economic challenges and traditional practices can result in bride prices as low as $5. This is driven by poverty and entrenched cultural norms. Efforts to combat these practices focus on promoting economic development and gender equality, aiming to address the root causes of bride buying. 9. Tanzania. In Tanzania, some areas face extreme poverty, leading to low bride prices around $5. This practice reflects broader economic pressures rather than widespread cultural acceptance. Efforts to combat this involve supporting economic development and promoting gender equality. 10. Somalia. Somalia's economic hardship and cultural norms have led to bride prices as low as $5 in some areas. These practices are symptomatic of poverty and gender inequality. Addressing these issues requires improving economic opportunities and supporting initiatives that enhance living conditions. In conclusion, while the idea of buying a wife for $5 might seem shocking, it's essential to understand the complex socioeconomic factors driving such practices. These situations often reflect deep-seated issues of poverty and gender inequality. Supporting efforts that focus on education, economic development, and gender equality is key to addressing these challenges and fostering a more just and equitable world.